Glad to have you both here. And I want to start talking about Joe Biden, and we're going to talk about the media. David, I hope you don't consider that a bait and switch, but we'll talk a little bit about Joe Biden
Sure.
because I'm sure you both are very familiar with the USA Today interview. Michael is credited by many for being willing to speak truthfully about the Bidens, which is great for the public interest. The media likes it too, but I mostly like to emphasize the public interest. So, Michael, what were your takeaways from the Biden interview with Susan Page, which the White House has suggested is the only print interview, at least he'll do as he exits here?
Well, I'm glad that they chose Susan. Just anecdotally, I remember on the campaign when I had reached out to Susan, I was scolded because the other side of the other side of the house or the campaign was scared of her. So I got into a lot of trouble for reaching out to Susan to attend the First Lady's South Carolina event. I'm glad they got over that. But disappointing, I think, to see what he said about, not disappointing, Mark. I think what he said about misinformation made me a little sad because he had every opportunity to use the bully pulpit and decided not to do it, decided not to use the bully pulpit to defend his own integrity, his own honor, his son, his family, his accomplishments. Didn't want to hold press conferences, do media avails, didn't want to do a Super Bowl interview. And I don't think it's actually him. I really don't. But he allowed that culture around him to hide him and not communicate with the voters. And the voters, through polling, told us they didn't want him as the nominee for well over a year and a half. So I don't quite understand. I can't really reconcile how he can be frustrated or have regrets that he didn't combat misinformation when he wasn't actively communicating really much at all.
Yeah, fair point. David, thoughts on the interview overall, but also on Michael's point about Joe Biden's seeming contradiction of not liking the status quo, but not having done much to change it.
I think it was most striking to me that he sort of admitted he couldn't serve another term, even
Yeah.
though he said he was able to beat Donald Trump, which I think most sane people believe that both of those were impossible. To me, there was a just sense of exasperation, him throwing his hands up in the air as an old Irishman. Who the hell knows? I mean, I think we all know he would have lost to Donald Trump, possibly in a bigger route. And that in some ways, even though Kamala Harris was a flawed and bad candidate, she preserved narrower majorities in Congress. I think that's what most people believe now. But the quote that just is going to linger with me is that he was running for re-election, and he said on the record he didn't know if he could serve the term. And that is striking. If he would have won re-election, imagine if he would have won, what kind of situation we would be in, given his cognitive ability that's on full display right now.